Good. Okay, so we're back in volume two of the Great Treatise. Right? So this is about bodhicitta. So we finished the last class talking about how bodhicitta is like the seed for enlightenment. Okay, so bodhicitta, the seed, what would be like the seed to grow a plant, grow a nice, beautiful tree? Okay, what would be like the fertilizer or the water or the soil? Dharma? What do you mean by dharma? Okay, well, bodhicitta is one of those two. So, so basically, the other ones besides bodhicitta, yeah, the other practices other than bodhicitta, including even emptiness, meditation, right, impermanence, meditation on the four truths, right, all the other practices of creating merit, accumulating merit. Okay, so those all are supports or they're other conditions, right, that are also needed. But why is bodhicitta the seed and those others, even emptiness, wisdom of emptiness, like the soil and fertilizer and everything? What's the difference in terms of creating enlightenment? So if you have an apple seed, can you grow an orange tree? Or can a rice seed grow a barley crop? Crop of barley? No. Okay. But can some nice, nice manure, some nice, some good rains, right? Can those help to grow barley, rice, apple trees, orange trees, everything, right? So all types of enlightenment are, are emptiness, impermanence, meditation on suffering, four truths. Those are all contributing to all types of enlightenment, right? How many types of enlightenment are there? Just three, right? Just three. Okay. That's the enlightenment of the hearers, the solitary realizers, and the Buddhas. Right? Hearers are those beings who wish for liberation from samsara, okay, but not full Buddhahood. Now you might wonder, well, why would you ever do that? Who would want just liberation from samsara, but then leave all their other sentient beings behind? Why would someone want that? Well, maybe you were brought up in a country where they don't talk about freeing all mother sentient beings from suffering, right? Which is much of the Buddhist world. And why would the Buddha even teach that in the first place? That you can achieve just enlightenment for yourself without liberating all mother sentient beings? Because different people have different capacities, different dispositions. The Buddha could see that some people just wouldn't be into a path where they had to achieve full awakening for all sentient beings. It's too much, overwhelming. It's just too big a thought, right? Or I actually heard this from one Vipassana meditation teacher when I was in India in 2009. And I asked him about this. I said, in your country, and he was from Burma, do you guys really, not think enlightenment, full enlightenment is a good goal? Or like why is it, it's like that? And he said, well, we're too scared of samsara. It's too much. We really fear samsara so much that we want to just get out as quick as we can. That's it. So that's the way of thinking. And the Buddha again could see that, well, some people, again, it's not like he didn't want them to achieve full enlightenment, but recognized that, for whatever reason, their karma, their attitude, their background, it just would have been too much for them to even conceive, right? Now you might think, well, then what about me? I'm not I'm not like this disciple of the Buddha who's there actually able to meet the Buddha directly. That must mean I don't have nearly as much merit as those disciples, and yet they weren't even able to conceive of enlightenment. How could I? It's just what it is. What to say? It's just there's different kinds of reasoning that we can use that taught in the text, right? So there's reasoning that is based on causal inference, right? There's reasoning that is kind of what's called just the reasoning of contingencies, understanding contingencies. Then there's kind of just what's called just kind of deductive logic reasoning. And then there's also, sorry, and there's reasoning, sorry, it's not causal and contingency. That's like the same thing. I'm sorry, I confused those go together. Then there's reasoning that's kind of deductive logical reasoning. And then there's reasoning of understanding functions of things, reasoning, by way of looking at functions. And then there's reasoning by way of looking at just the nature of things, right? What we call brute force reasoning, right? In modern lingo. Just the brute facts, not brute force, but brute facts. Sorry. So just the brute facts of the world. We managed to meet the teachings about bodhicitta. We liked them. We came and started to study them more and wanted to practice them. That's just what it is. We can't really explain it beyond that. We're lucky. Okay. Lucky because of conditions. It's not just random luck, but we had somehow created the conditions to meet with the Mahayana teaching. Okay. So it's very fortunate. Okay, so I'll keep reading. Maybe start back just to remind everybody where it kind of came from. So in my version of this PDF, this is page 17, in the bottom of page 17. So there's first a quote from the Array of Stalks Sutra. In regard to this, the Array of Stalks Sutra says, O child of good lineage, the spirit of enlightenment is like the seed of all the Buddha qualities. Okay, so again, the sutras are vast, right? We have 100 volumes of Gangir. Gangir means the translated words of the Buddha. In the Tibetan canon alone, then we have the Chinese agamas, the Chinese canon, and the Pali canon. They all have some shared sutras, but also some unique ones. So it's even bigger. So the Buddha, right? Even just the perfection of wisdom sutras, we have many different perfection of wisdom sutras. Sutra in 100,000 lines, 25,000 lines, 18,000 lines, 8,000 lines. Heart Sutra, just a page and a half or 2 pages. And then other ones as well, the Diamond Sutra, etc., etc. So he taught a lot, and sometimes when you're reading through the sutras, you might get a sense of like, oh, this is nice, this is poetic, this is inspiring. But what Tsongkhapa is doing is taking this quotation from the sutra and recognizing in it, no, this is really pointing out something very, very important. Again, that has a logical foundation to it, right? The Buddha didn't just say this because it's nice and a nice metaphor, right? He actually means something by it. So then Tsongkhapa goes on, because you must fully comprehend this statement, I will explain it. When water, manure, warmth, earth, etc., combine with a rice seed, they act as the causes of the rice sprout. If they combine with the seeds of wheat, peas, etc., they act as the causes of these types of sprouts. Everyone knows this. This is simple, right? Therefore, these factors are the general causes of the sprouts. Okay? General causes. They can cause many different kinds of sprouts. But it is impossible for a barley seed, even though it combines with those conditions, to be the cause of a barley sprout. Okay, sprout of rice. Sorry. even though it combines with those conditions to be the cause of a sprout of rice and so on. Thus, a barley seed is the specific cause of a barley sprout. Okay, barley sprout cannot be the cause of a sprout of rice. Barley seed causes a barley sprout. And the water, manure, and so forth that are linked with that seed become the general causes of the barley sprout. Now, I'll throw a question at you. Okay, let's say we have a rice sprout in the rice paddy in the field. Okay, would you say that that arose from a rice seed? Rice sprout? Did it arise from a rice seed? Okay. Now, did it also arise from the water and the fertilizer, the manure? Did it arise from those things too? Okay. Yes. No. I think so. Did it did it arise from the farmer who planted it? Yes. It arose from the farmer. Okay. Okay. Did it arise from the farmer's breakfast? The farmer who planted it, he ate breakfast that morning before he planted it? Yes. Okay, how about a Tibetan farmer who eats tsampa for breakfast? Tsampa's barley, right? Tsampa's made from barley. Okay. So did that farmer eat barley? And did that barley cause the rice sprout?
Using conditions. There's a difference between condition and cause.
Okay. So it says, what did this line just say? Thus, a barley seed is the specific, but it is impossible. There we go. It's a strong word, but it is impossible for a barley seed, though it combines with those conditions, to be the cause of a sprout of rice, and so on. So is it impossible for a barley seed to be the cause of a sprout of rice? No. So what's he saying? Okay, so we have to understand all these statements, right? And be able to tease out exactly what he's saying. So a barley seed can be the cause of a sprout of rice, but only in a very indirect way, right? It's not what we would call the substantial cause or the really to say it most clearly, the immediate substantial cause of a sprout of rice. That would be only a rice seed, the immediate substantial cause. So there's different categorizations of causes in this philosophy, right? So that we can really get clear about exactly what is producing what aspect of something and how things come together. And this is, again, very important for this particular topic. So we understand how bodhicitta contributes to achieving Buddhahood and how Buddhahood is attained, right? So if we don't really understand what causes are absolutely necessary for Buddhahood and what, you know, might, and then not just necessary, because again, there are many causes necessary for Buddhahood, but which ones are specific to just Buddhahood, right? And don't cause other types of enlightenment or other spiritual, results. Then we won't know what to practice, right? We won't be able to do the actual practices that will bring about that result. Likewise, the spirit of unsurpassed enlightenment is like the seed, the specific cause among the general causes of the sprout of Buddhahood. The wisdom that knows emptiness is the general cause of the three types of enlightenment, Shravaka, Pratyeka Buddha, and Bodhisattva, just as water, manure, etc. are the general causes of the sprouts. Hence, Maitreya's sublime continuum also states that, and then quotes it, aspiration to the supreme vehicle is the seed, wisdom is the mother for generating the Buddha qualities. Okay. Now this is going to give an analogy so Tsongkhapa, right? He did live in a particular time and place, okay, with a particular cultural perspective, okay? Of course, our anthropologists will be able to explain much better how, in general, this works in human beings, but in societies. But this might sound strange to you, this next analogy. So I would say, let's just read it first. Okay. Thus, the spirit of enlightenment is like the seed of the Father. I mean, the seed, which is the Father, right? The spirit of enlightenment is like the seed of the Father, actually. Yeah, it means the semen, right? The seed of the Father. And the wisdom which knows selflessness is like the mother. For example, since a Tibetan father cannot have a boy who is Indian, Mongolian, and so forth, he is the specific cause of the child's lineage. Okay, lineage also could be translated as race or ethnicity or something. Just the general word means type, but it's used like broadly to the lineage here. Anyway, so race, he is the specific cause of a child's lineage, ethnicity, whereas a Tibetan mother can give birth to a variety of boys and is therefore the general cause of her child. It just means children here, really, more than just boys. But anyway, okay. So does that make sense? So he's saying a Tibetan mother can birth an Indian child, a Mongolian child, but a Tibetan father cannot give birth to or contribute to the birth of a Mongolian or Indian. Does that make sense or no? Yes. Okay. So an American mother can give birth to an Indian, but a American father can't you know make an Indian boy, an Indian child. Why would that be? Or an Indian father can't give birth to, it can't be the father of his adversary. Can't father an American. What if an Indian immigrates to America, then marries an American citizen, and then fathers a child? Is that fathering an American child or no, an Indian child?
Just according to the conventions.
It's just according to the convention. Okay. Good.
Say
Okay.
an American child, right?
It's an American child. I mean, that's the question.
Yeah, I'd say according to American social convention.
It's just according to social
and
convention. Okay.
Racial categorization. Yeah.
Okay. Right. There you go. So it's just according to the convention. Exactly. So that, but it's not because it's just according to convention, it's not an example that would apply universally. But the meaning is that it should be definite, right? It's not just according to social convention. And the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas also depend on wisdom. For the protector Nagarjuna, in the praise of the perfection of wisdom, says, the path of liberation upon which the Buddhas, Pratyeka Buddhas, and Shravakas definitely rely is just this. It is certain that there are no others. The perfection of wisdom is the mother of both Hinayana and Mahayana disciples, for it is also spoken of as mother. Consequently, do not distinguish Hinayana and Mahayana by the wisdom that knows emptiness, but by the spirit of enlightenment and the greatly effective bodhisattva deeds. Okay, so now we're saying don't distinguish Hinayana Mahayana by the wisdom that knows emptiness, right? Now that means again in terms of their path, not in terms of like calling a whole sect of Buddhism Hinayana, just the individual person who's doing practices, right? So that individual person, if they don't have bodhicitta, they're Hinayana and they're practicing Buddhist path, they are a Hinayana person. They have bodhicitta, they're a Mahayana person. Then it's saying the wisdom that knows emptiness. Now, what would that be for those who have kind of gone into a bit of the different philosophical schools, the tenet systems or philosophical schools? Would that be the case with all the tenets? No. Okay, so which perspective is Tsongkhapa writing from here?
The Madhyamaka.
The Madhyamaka perspective. Very good. And why is that?
That's the only tenet system that that emptiness is necessary
To achieve mere liberation. Exactly right. Very good. Right. So, and there are other Buddhist philosophical schools where they assert or believe that by understanding just the selflessness of a self-sufficient, substantially existent person, you can achieve liberation and from samsara, right? Whereas for the Madhyamakas, even to achieve liberation as a Sravaka, a hearer, or a Pratyeka Buddha, then you still need the wisdom of full wisdom of emptiness. Okay, so the other type of selflessness is seen in the Madhyamaka as a coarser or easier to understand type of selflessness. Makes sense? A little bit. Okay, that can be a topic for later. So then the quote from the Nagarjuna's Precious Garland. Since the aspirational prayers, deeds, and complete dedications of the Bodhisattva are not explained in the Sravaka vehicle, how then could you become a Bodhisattva through it? Oh, that's a good question, right? Like when you look in the Pali Canon, it doesn't even have the Bodhisattva practices in there, right? They're mentioned, but it doesn't really go into much depth about them. Thus, he says that you differentiate these vehicles not by philosophical view, but by deeds. If in this way, even the wisdom that knows emptiness is not a specifically Mahayana path, it goes without saying that there are other shared paths as well. Hence, it is a clear indication that you have very little familiarity with the teachings when, after you have taken the spirit of enlightenment to be the crucial instruction, you do not practice it. But after recalling it at the beginning of a session only in words, you intently make great effort at some single small portion of the path. So again, Tsongkhapa's way of saying meditate on bodhicitta. a lot of thought about bodhicitta. Scott, you have a comment?
Practice bodhicitta without realizing, without having aspiration for bodhicitta, could you still achieve Buddhahood? Like if you didn't know of the teachings, but you were a practitioner, like that's how you lived your life, is to free all sentient beings from suffering. That's just the way you acted at all times. Then would you attain Buddhahood without ever having known the teaching? Like the Buddha attained Buddhahood without having been taught bodhicitta, right? He realized bodhicitta and acted in that way. So do you have to be a practitioner of the Mahayana school to become a Buddha, or do you just have to be a practitioner of bodhicitta in real experience, kind of to his point in that stanza?
Good question. So let's see. The question is also raising another question, right? Just what is bodhicitta? What is this mind? Does anyone remember how it was defined?
Mind aspires to enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings.
Wonderful. So the mind that aspires to enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So let's see, where was the quote from? Right. Well, it's a mind with the two aspirations, and that's another way of saying it is what Scott said, right? A mind with these two aspirations. And one aspiration is for enlightenment, and one aspiration is for benefiting all sentient beings, right? Does that sound familiar? And then there he gave the quote from the Ornament of Clear Realizations, which is here in the text, so that's what I'm looking for right now. But maybe, I'm not sure if we actually got to it, or I think he may have just said it, even though maybe it comes later in the text, because I'm not seeing it as I scroll. I didn't see it, but the quote, just to translate it on the spot, just says, right, mind expansion is for the sake of others, desire for perfect enlightenment. Right? Desire for perfect enlightenment for the sake of others is mind expansion. Maybe we would reverse it in English. So, what does that mean? Okay, so Scott had a question. Does anyone have any idea what the answer might be, or how What do you think about it? So we're saying bodhicitta, Scott's saying if you live with bodhicitta but have never actually kind of learned the Dharma, I guess you could say, in any formal sense, right? I mean, like from someone who studied it or studied it yourself from a book or from, someone who was, going back to the Buddha in a lineage, then would you still achieve Buddhahood if you're living your life, right, with bodhicitta? So what is again bodhicitta? Right? Okay. So if you've never learned anything about Buddhism, okay, what kind of person, what would it mean to then seek enlightenment? Let me just say, what does it mean to seek enlightenment? Do you have to know what enlightenment is? Start there. To seek enlightenment, do you have to know what it is? To seek a PhD, do you have to know what it is? To try to become a doctor, do you have to know what a doctor is? I mean, you could like be a kid and just like hear, oh, doctors are great. And just go, yeah, I want to be a doctor. Okay, well, first of all, you still heard something about doctors. Second of all, you don't really know anything about what they are, right? You just say, I want to be a doctor. I mean, that's right. That's not really seeking to be a doctor, right?
But the Buddha attained Buddhahood without the teachings of the Buddha.
Okay, is that true?
Right? Like even though there's previous lives and all these things that are leading up to that, realization didn't happen just randomly. There were the cause and conditions, but there was no written dharma
Right.
with this specificity before he expounded the dharma. Yet he attained Buddhahood. So is it not possible to attain Buddhahood in that same manner without ever having heard specifically the Dharma?
Right. Okay, so did the Buddha not hear the Dharma? Is that true?
Well, he realized the Dharma. Like it was a realization, right? Like his life was a realization of the truth.
Right. So the Buddha achieved enlightenment before emanating as Siddhartha Gautama, right? Remember our tradition, all the 12 deeds of the Buddha were already as an enlightened being. So the Buddha was enlightened before when he was already into Shita, right? Before he even came to planet Earth. So he was
As this incarnation, as that incarnation, but wasn't there still an initial, like I know it's
he was a Buddha, so that means he was awakened. So you don't ever stop being. Once you're a Buddha, you never go back to being.
But you become a Buddha.
So the Buddha became a Buddha
at some point. Without the Dharma that we know of, at least, or at least this,
right?
This
so
expounding.
Right. So the Dharma we know of, this expounding, is the Dharma of Shakyamuni Buddha, right? It is the teaching of Shakyamuni Buddha. So of course he didn't have that, but he did have the teachings of the previous Buddhas that he studied with and that he relied on. So he did definitely have the Dharma teachings. I mean, the lineage coming from a Buddha. So it's probably it's a wonderful thing to think about and to debate even. Was there a first Buddha? Could there be? Okay. It's quite a mind, whatever you end up on, whichever side of the question you end up on, it's a mind expanding, this word again, reflection, right? Just helps your mind to really, just you expand through time, through space, through possibilities when you think about these questions, What would it really take to become a Buddha? I mean, that's the essence of your question, right? What does it take to become Buddha? And that's what we're talking about, right? So you need bodhicitta. Does it say you need to learn that bodhicitta from another person? But not right here. But I guess my question still comes back to, you need to know what if you seek enlightenment, you need to know what enlightenment is, right? Mm-hmm. Theravada practitioner could absolutely become a Buddha, right? Theravada practitioners doesn't mean you're a Shravaka. or Pratyeka Buddha or whatever. Theravada practitioners can be bodhisattvas. Yeah. Because again, Hinayana, Mahayana is distinction based on an individual person's mind, right? It's not based on what country you grew up in or what books you're reading or whatever, right? Yeah.
What you said about when you asked that teacher in 2009, like, okay, we can't imagine, but then you practice bodhicitta, even though that wasn't your intent, it was just for your individual liberation. But then practice bodhicitta to such an extent, could you then become a Buddha? You know, without ever having adopted that as your goal.
Well, if you're practicing bodhicitta, that means your goal is enlightenment. That's what bodhicitta is, right? You're practicing the motivation to become enlightened. So that's why I asked, like, when you're actually meditating bodhicitta, it's not compassion, right? Compassion is the cause. It comes, shortly in the text. Compassion is a cause of bodhicitta, right? Just like bodhicitta is cause of enlightenment, compassion is a cause of bodhicitta, seed of bodhicitta, right? It's actually they use now for compassion is the root, but the root of bodhicitta. So when you actually are meditating in bodhicitta, you're not meditating on compassion. Your goal, your mind is focused on enlightenment, not on sentient beings. So for the sake of sentient beings, right? So you have to have that kind of fueling it or in the background somewhere, or maybe before you actually get to the meditation of bodhicitta itself. So what we just did today in the morning, just before we started the text, was that a meditation on bodhicitta? Or was it a meditation on compassion? Or on emptiness, okay, sure.
Passion is he told us to specifically focus on the suffering of people and them.
Yeah. So it was the meditation was generating the mind as an entity of compassion, right? To use the phrasing of the text that Rinpoche has been saying, right? Generating your mind into an entity, into an experience of compassion, right? However, we could still say it's meditation on bodhicitta because bodhicitta meditation includes the steps of generating it. So, it's just a kind of a trick question, or it just depends on what you mean exactly by meditation on. But the actual, when we're saying to meditate on bodhicitta, to meditate on compassion, is to actually you transform your mind into the experience of bodhicitta. It wasn't that, right? Our mind were transformed into the experience of compassion. Okay.
So what's the difference between meditating on bodhicitta and meditating on seeking enlightenment for your own benefit?
Very good. Tsongkhapa is going to get into that. Okay. Great question. Yeah. Great question. So he'll get into sort of the difference between one, even seeking liberation, nirvana, I should say, nirvana for the sake of all sentient beings, for the sake of others, is not bodhicitta. And likewise, seeking enlightenment for your own benefit is not bodhicitta. So those two have to come together to be bodhicitta. Those two meaning the goal being full awakening of a Buddha and the purpose being to benefit others have to come together. And that does come a little bit later.
I have another question. So
Yeah.
becoming a bodhisattva, that's not escaping samsara because you want to benefit other beings, but like coming close to that. Is enlightenment like escaping samsara? Like is enlightenment removing yourself?
So
And
it's
for removing yourself, can't you like not be able to benefit, help others reach enlightenment? It might just be confusing to look at.
yeah. So all that question is also addressed later. This section covers a lot, so it covers a lot of those questions. But just go down. It's pretty soon, I think. So right here, it's literally like the next page from where we are. Yeah. So let's just keep reading. But just to answer kind of more generally, and then then I'll answer it based on what the text says. But a bodhisattva, a Buddha, maybe the best way to say it is samsara is not a place. Okay. Samsara is not a place. So you can interact with beings, have a physical, corporeal form, right, or many, and not be in samsara, right? Okay, so what did we just finish reading? There was a quote by Nagarjuna, and the emphasis on the seed, the mother, father. Yeah, okay. So, oh, it's right. It's actually just the next line, even. Yeah, next, like a couple lines down. So here we had this. In general, just as both father and mother are needed to have a child, you need the entire complement of method and wisdom to have a complete path. In particular, you need the main method, the spirit of enlightenment, and the main wisdom, the knowledge of emptiness. Okay, so there are many other branch aspects of method and wisdom. The main ones are spirit of enlightenment, another word for bodhicitta, and wisdom of emptiness, knowledge of emptiness. If you only meditate on one of them and diligently seek merely to be liberated from cyclic existence, then you have to meditate on the meaning of emptiness or selflessness without mistaking meditative serenity for insight. Nonetheless, if you claim to be a Mahayana practitioner, so what it's saying is like you can do that, right? You can only meditate on wisdom and seek to be merely liberated from cyclic existence, but then you just have to make sure that you don't mistake meditative serenity for insight. Now, what does that mean? Well, that again is connected to this whole history of debates and different types of practice, and essentially, even to this day, we have an idea, a notion of meditation on emptiness really being essentially cultivating concentration or just kind of abiding in the nature of mind in a kind of a meditative equipoise, right? And Tsongkhapa very strongly, like, tries to overcome that view by using a lot of different both scriptural sources and reasoning, and it comes again and again throughout the text. But anyway, point is, he's just saying some people might actually mistake meditative serenity as their mind becomes completely full of bliss. They're completely stable. They have no afflictions manifest, no manifest afflictions because they're being suppressed, but it doesn't mean that they have realized emptiness and achieved nirvana. Nonetheless, if you claim to be a Mahayana practitioner, okay, so now he's saying with the Mahayana practitioners, then you must be practicing the spirit of enlightenment as well. Bodhicitta as well. Why? You need wisdom to prevent, so this is Alex's question, why? You need wisdom to prevent falling into the extreme of cyclic existence, that's samsara, and you need compassion to prevent falling into the extreme of peace, nirvana. So wisdom does not prevent you from falling into the extreme of peace. Okay, so the whole Buddhist teaching, Madhyamaka is one of the four main philosophical schools. Madhyamaka means the middle way. The word means translated. But all of the Buddhist teachings are seen as being a middle way for the particular, whichever philosophical school you're in, you're conceiving of that system as a middle way. So there are different meanings of middle. Middle between what? Two extremes. You don't want to fall into an extreme. You don't want to fall off a cliff. Right? You're walking a tightrope. You don't want to fall over the edge. Stay in the middle. Well, what are the two edges? So that question, the two edges mean different things in different contexts. The two extremes. So here, what are the two extremes? Samsara and nirvana. For a Mahayana practitioner, nirvana is an extreme. It's falling off the tightrope, falling over the cliff. Okay. As the venerable, so I'll just read that line again. Why? You need wisdom to prevent falling into the extreme of cyclic existence, and you need compassion to prevent falling into the extreme of peace, nirvana. So wisdom does not prevent you from falling into the extreme of peace. As the Venerable Maitreya says in his Ornament for Clear Knowledge, Abhisamaila Alamkara, sometimes it's called Ornament for Clear Realization, it's the same text. Through knowledge, you do not abide in cyclic existence. Through compassion, you do not abide in peace. There you go. If you are a Mahayana practitioner, you must practice the spirit of enlightenment, because even in the Hinayana, you do not fall into the extreme of cyclic existence. And the main thing to be prevented on the Bodhisattva path is falling into the extreme of peace. Okay. That's the main thing to be prevented. In other words, the main thing that a Bodhisattva is aiming to do in terms of, so of course, achieve enlightenment, right? But in terms of sort of what are you overcoming? What are you avoiding? What are you careful about? That is what's called anyone remember? The self-cherishing attitude. It's a kind of self-centeredness or self-obsession, right? Now, of course, when we say that word, self-obsession, we think of it in a very extreme way. Oh, a complete narcissist who's totally just out of their mind, always thinking about themselves. But there's very subtle forms of it too. So this, and what we're talking about now, understands even the desire to achieve your own liberation, right? And not considering the needs of all the infinite other beings is a very subtle form of this. So even of self-obsession. Now, it's not this kind of, the way that we can see it. If there's a arhat who has achieved nirvana, of course, they're a holy person. Their mind is so pure, so peaceful. They're going to act in ways that are, very noble, very kind, very, they'll be clearly an amazing human being, a commendable human being in every way. But just that basic attitude that, I, for me, achieved liberation, want to achieve liberation, want to be in nirvana. I don't want samsara for me. That is what we're saying is something to be avoided by a bodhisattva. So it's really subtle just to identify, right? Because it's really just like, you have to completely turn the entire world, inside out. Your entire way of looking at life, you have to completely turn inside out. Because our way of looking at life is, I'm here, I'm me. Oh, better go get something for me. Better go earn money for me. Get food for me. Go to the toilet for me. Wake up for me. Go to bed for me. We don't do it for the sake of all sentient beings. Occasionally we manage to get a few thoughts of kindness and compassion in there. We see another person, especially someone we love or like, of course, we're able to now and then do something for them. But even then, that tends to be connected with a sense of, and I'll get some fulfillment from that too, right? So it's really, we have to really turn inside out our whole way of living, our whole way of thinking. And it's not just thinking, because it's more subtle than that, right? Our whole way of experiencing life. Yeah, sorry.
So, but this isn't saying that bodhisattvas don't attain nirvana or don't become arhat bodhisattva.
Well, they attain what's called non-abiding nirvana. So it's a different kind of nirvana, very different. Yeah. So generally, nirvana is considered an extreme that they avoid. But we still use the word. We do use the word. So they achieve, a level of realization that is right beyond. So even their understanding of emptiness is deeper, is more full, more complete than an arhat, a hero arhat who has achieved nirvana. So like everything that a bodhisattva does is kind of beyond. Even the bliss of nirvana for an arhat, right? This is in the first chapter of Bodhicharyavatara, where Shantideva says that, or maybe it wasn't the first chapter, I think so, but anyway, some in the text, that right, a bodhisattva has greater bliss, greater joy in their mind, filled with greater joy than an arhat even can ever experience, just by hearing someone say, "Please give something. Please give, give me a beggar saying, right?" So their bodhicitta is the cause of that much joy, the cause of that much happiness. So even though it's not liberation, even though they might be on the basic, path of accumulation where they don't even have a direct perception of emptiness, right? Because of the bodhicitta, they experience greater joy than an arhat. who's fully gone through all 5 paths of the Shravakayana. An arhat is someone who has achieved liberation. I mean, again, we have to see there are 15 paths, 5 for each of the 3 vehicles. The 3 vehicles, Shravaka or hearer vehicle, Pratyeka Buddha or solitary realizer vehicle, and then the Bodhisattva vehicle. Okay, so or you could just call it the Mahayana, right? So the each of those is composed of 5 paths, right? Path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of singing, path of meditation, path of no more learning. When we say path, it's a mind. A path is a mind, a consciousness. So path of accumulation is where is the state of mind of a being who is any meditation they're doing, any virtue they're doing, any thought of generosity, any thought of patience, any thought of ethical maintaining an ethical behavior, right? I'm saying 6 perfections, of course, right? Any meditation they do that is embraced by what's called the uncontrived renunciation. So uncontrived renunciation is the sort of foundation, the starting point for the path of accumulation. Or the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas. For a Bodhisattva, it is instead bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is the first moment of bodhicitta that you generate uncontrived, right? That's again the bodhicitta, like the inner sweet juice of the sugar cane instead of the stem, right? The flavor of the bark, I should say, the bark, right? So once you generate that, that's the first moment of the bodhisattva's path of accumulation. Once you generate renunciation, that means, again, the desire for yourself to be free of samsara, to leave samsara, achieve liberation or nirvana. That's the first moment of path of accumulation for a Shravaka. So, path of accumulation, then you just continue deepening your realizations, continue accumulating more merit. Eventually, you get to the path of preparation, the path of seeing, where you have your first direct perception of emptiness. Then, path of meditation, continue to deepen that, continue meditating on that. It's the afflictions just kind of gradually, fall. I mean, you counteract them. You are, actively removing them, right? It's a process. And then finally, you achieve the path of no more learning. So if you are a Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha who's achieved the path of no more learning, then they are called an Arhat. Now, the Buddha also is called an Arhat, but Mahayana Arhat, it's just the Buddha has also achieved the Bodhisattva's path of no more learning. So the Buddha is also an Arhat. The word Arhat means foe destroyer, someone who has destroyed the foe of afflictions, right? You want to say something? Yeah.
It's only the nirvana of the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas think of the extreme of nirvana and non-abiding nirvana that Bodhisattvas attain, not the extreme.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, because they don't, this the word itself is kind of clear that non-abiding nirvana, they're not abiding in the extreme of nirvana, even though they have the same freedom from the afflictions and karma and the imprints even. Yeah, Jason.
So does a Buddha likewise sit in between these 2 extremes?
Mhm.
It's also so the Buddha is in a non-abiding nirvana.
Yeah, only the Buddha. Yeah.
Only the Buddha.
Yeah,
So
bodhisattvas are not in any nirvana. We don't say a bodhisattva is in the nirvana. Yeah, even like I said, so even if they have this does sort of change depending on if those 4 tenet systems again. There are some differences in how they would say like when a bodhisattva achieves nirvana or not. But the Tsongkhapa's from the perspective of Tsongkhapa as a prasangika madhyamaka, then you don't fully eliminate the afflictions until Buddhahood itself, right? Mm-hmm. And that's when you are in non-abiding nirvana, right? Mm-hmm. So, but even before then, a bodhisattva, even on the path of accumulation, like kind of the point I was trying to make, they have greater joy than an arhat who is merely an arhat in regular nirvana, of a Shravaka. So it's like it sounds funny, like they're happier, they have more stronger joy, stronger bliss, but they're not in nirvana. So again, it's this seems to be the experience of the realized beings. This is what happens, and this is what they've taught to us. I don't know if there's really like exact. You can reason your way into it. It's just try to meditate on bodhicitta and see if it's true. You could kind of reason your way into it by just, again, really acknowledging, well, what is bodhicitta the opposite of, right? What is it actually actively destroying or overpowering in the mind? So that's self-centered grasping, right? So self-grasping can have two meanings. One is just the cognition of a truly existent self, but that's not what bodhicitta overcomes. That's what the wisdom of emptiness overcomes. The bodhicitta overcomes the perspective that I'm the center of the world. That's, I think the simplest way to say it, which we can say again, the self-obsession of cherishing attitude, right? I'm the main character, everyone else is an NPC. So versus that, everyone else is the main character. Okay, that's bodhicitta. Well, again, and then desiring to achieve enlightenment on top of it. that's other cherishing attitude, which is the next step, and that is the actual bodhicitta, the actual desire to become enlightened. Okay, if you are a Mahayana practitioner, you must practice the spirit of enlightenment, bodhicitta, because even in the Hinayana, you do not fall into the extreme of cyclic existence, and the main thing to be prevented on the bodhisattva path is falling into the extreme of peace. When the conqueror's children, who validly interpret the commentaries on the conqueror's intended meaning, conqueror again is another word for Buddha, if you didn't know, Chombinde or Bhagavan in Sanskrit, the Bhagavan. So the conqueror's children also is another word for bodhisattvas. Okay. So when the conqueror's children, bodhisattvas, who validly interpret the commentaries on the conqueror's intended meaning, generate just this precious spirit in their minds, they are amazed and think, such a marvelous path has arisen. However, they do not have the same feeling when they attain a slight good quality pleasing to ordinary persons, as it says in the engaging in the bodhisattva deeds, Shantideva's great text. This altruistic spirit, which is not born in others even for their own sake, is a special jewel of the mind, bringing an unprecedented wonder. And then another quote, is there any virtue equal to this? Is there any such friend? Is there any such merit? Another quote, I bow down to the body of anyone who has generated the sacred jewel of the mind. And the last quote, it is the quintessential butter churned from the milk of the sublime teaching. Okay, thus the spirit of enlightenment is the supreme instruction extracting the quintessence, right? The essence of the scriptures. So I'll just say this one verse here, this spirit, altruistic spirit, which is not born in others, even for their own sake, right? So it's quite moving because the idea is that everybody wants to be happy, right? Keep repeating that, sort of the basis of Buddhism itself, right? Don't harm others because everybody wants to be happy. No one wants to suffer. Sure, but even regular people, right, who haven't learned about bodhicitta, who don't understand that there's this possibility of this supreme bliss of full awakening of a Buddha, right? They can't even think of having such great happiness for themselves as much as a bodhisattva, someone who gives rise to bodhicitta, has a wish for them to achieve that much happiness, right? So bodhisattvas are looking at us like wanting us to do better than we even want for ourselves, because we can't even conceive of that great happiness, Therefore, so we'll finish with this. Okay, I'll do the next two paragraphs. Therefore, although the glorious Atisha held the Madhyamaka view, and his teacher Sir Lingpa held the Satyakaravadan view, Atisha attained the spirit of enlightenment by depending on him, and therefore took him to be the kindest of his gurus. Okay, Satyagraha view is another word for the Chittamatra mind-only school, right? So Sir Lingpa had what we could say is a lower, less subtle, less advanced understanding of emptiness. His understanding of ultimate truth was different, well, considered a lower school. Then his disciple, Atisha. Atisha was one of the main masters who helped bring Buddhism from India to Tibet. Right? He was alive from 982 to 1040. Okay, so we're looking at 11th century, right? So Atisha, he went to, where did he go? Where did he study with Sri Sumatra, right? He went to Indonesia, the island of Sumatra, to study with Sri So even he, in the great land of India, where Buddha was himself from, couldn't find a good enough teacher to teach him bodhicitta, so he had to go to Indonesia. Okay. So he went and studied with this master, lived with him for 12 years, Sri Lingpa. Okay, so that's all in the first chapter, the first volume of the Lamrim Chenmo, right? Because that talks about the greatness of the author. So the author of the Lamrim Chenmo, the Lamrim Chenmo is Tsongkhapa, but he's considering, because he's basing it on Atisha's Lamb for the Path to Enlightenment, Atisha is like the author of the whole Lamrim tradition. Okay. So although he held this Chittamatra view, Atisha attained the spirit of enlightenment by depending on him, and therefore took him to be the kindest of his gurus. Okay, so he was really his main guru, even though he didn't teach him about emptiness. If those who know the core of the scriptures look at this part of Atisha's biography, they will gain a great understanding of a key point of the path. Okay, so whoever can help you generate bodhicitta, that's amazing, right? Unparalleled. If you generate this spirit in an uncontrived manner, after making much effort, you will be imbued with the spirit of enlightenment, and then even giving a tiny morsel of food to a crow will be considered a bodhisattva deed. However, if you lack this spirit, even offering a universe of 3 billion world systems filled with jewels will not be considered a bodhisattva deed. Likewise, actions such as the perfections from ethical discipline through wisdom, okay, again, the 6 perfections, as well as meditation on yourself as a deity and meditation on the channels, winds, drops, etc. What is all that about? Tantra, right? That's tantric practice, okay? Will also not be considered bodhisattva deeds, okay? Try to practice tantra without bodhicitta, it is not a bodhisattva practice, okay? Okay, looks like our time is up. Any final question or comment? Okay, so we can dedicate merit so that we can generate bodhicitta, and so that all living beings will generate bodhicitta, and that we can help them to do so through our own practice, and then eventually being able to make a connection, help to teach them, inspire them, encourage them to generate bodhicitta. So we can do that by, of course, ourselves becoming awakened, becoming bodhisattvas, by generating bodhicitta ourselves. And whichever verses you know, just chant along, or you can just think about what I'm saying. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. In the snowy mountain pure land, you're the source of good and happiness. Powerful Tenzin Gyatso generously, may you stay until samsara's end. Changchu San Chogrim Boche, Ma Ge Pa Nam Ge Gyorji, Ge Pa Nyam Pa Me Pa Yang, Gong ne gong du pe wai shou. Okay, thank you, everybody. So is there, were people able to bring snacks and tea in the patio? They're out there, okay, so we can sit on the patio for the snacks and everything. Okay, take care, Priscilla, I'll talk to you soon. Yeah, bye-bye.